Commander Elias Ward lived in silence. His station floated alone above a quiet blue planet, an old world long forgotten by the new colonies. The stars outside his window never changed. They just shone like frozen memories too far away to touch. He had been there for years, maintaining old systems that no one cared about anymore. The corridors were cold, the lights dim, and the sound of air filters was the only voice he heard. Sometimes he recorded logs for his own comfort. "Log entry 2489, he said one evening, speaking to the recorder. "System nominal. No contact for 17 days. Silence continues." He stopped and smiled sadly. "Silence continues." It had become his daily joke. Elias had once been a respected officer. He helped build the first outer colonies when humanity began spreading across the stars. But when peace came, the new generation took over. He was too old, too slow, too human for their automated world. Now he watched the stars, remembering a time when people still sent handwritten letters and ships had crews who laughed together. The machines didn't laugh. Then, on a normal cycle, something impossible happened. The alarm rang, not loud but enough to make his heart jump. "Incoming vessel detected," the screen blinked. He frowned. No one had visited his sector for almost a decade. He rushed to the control console, his hands shaking. "Identify," he said. No signal, just a small craft drifting toward the docking bay. It wasn't in the registry. "No colony tag, no beacon code. Who are you?" Elias whispered. The craft latched onto the airlock with a soft thunk. The pressure gauges rose. Air was entering the corridor. Someone was coming in. He grabbed his old sidearm out of habit, though he didn't expect danger. The door hissed open and white mist filled the air. Through the haze, a shape appeared. A person. A young woman stepped through, wearing a silver suit that shimmered like liquid metal. Her movements were slow, calm, graceful. She removed her helmet and her face was pale and calm, with eyes that seemed to hold a deep, distant sadness. Elias lowered the weapon but didn't holster it. "Who are you?" he asked. She looked at him for a long moment before answering softly. "My name is Lyra." Her voice was strange, clear, but carrying a faint echo, as if another version of her spoke at the same time from far away. "This station isn't on any active route," Elias said. "How did you find it?" "I didn't," she replied. "I remembered it." That confused him. Remembered? But no one remembers this place except he stopped. Her eyes, and silver like starlight, reflected him standing there, older, tired, and very human. She looked around the room slowly, touching the walls. The lights flickered to life wherever her fingers brushed, as if the station itself recognized her. Elias stared. "What did you just do?" "I woke it up," she said quietly. "It's been waiting." Her words sent a chill down his spine. "Waiting for what?" She looked at him, and for a moment he felt a strange connection, like he had met her before in a dream. "For you," she said. Elias tried to laugh, but it came out awkward. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else. I'm just a maintenance officer keeping this place from falling apart." She tilted her head slightly. "You call it silence, don't you?" "The quiet in your room. The stillness of this station," he froze. "How do you know that?" "I know because I've lived in it too," she whispered. "In another tomorrow." Elias blinked. "Another tomorrow? You're from the future?" Lyra looked down. "Not exactly. I'm from a timeline that ended, a version of humanity that fell silent." Her words didn't sound like fantasy. They carried too much sorrow, too much truth. Elias slowly put the weapon down. "Why are you here?" he asked. "To stop it from happening again," she said. "To give this humanity a chance to remember what it's about to forget." He didn't understand everything she meant, but he could feel the weight in her voice, the kind of weight that comes from loss. She walked past him and placed her hand on a dormant console. The screens came alive, glowing with data that had been locked for centuries. Elias stared in disbelief. "That system hasn't responded since before I was born," he muttered. "It responds to me because I was part of it," she said softly. "My creators built me using fragments of human memory. I am an echo, a reflection of what your kind once was." Elias took a slow breath. "So you're not human?" She smiled faintly. "I am what remains of humanity's hope. If that makes me human, then yes." He didn't reply. He simply watched her, trying to process everything. After some time, she looked out the window at the planet below, the silent blue world. What is its name? She asked. Erebos, he said. It was supposed to be a new Earth, but the terraforming failed. Too cold, too unstable. No one lives there now. She nodded as if she already knew. In my world, Erebos became the final refuge of humankind. The last city burned there before silence covered everything. Elias's throat felt tight. And now? Now you still have a choice, she said. He wanted to ask what she meant, but before he could, the lights dimmed. The power output of the station surged unnaturally high. Lyra turned back to him. I used some of my energy to wake the systems, she explained. But it won't last long. I'll need your help to stabilize it. He nodded automatically. Tell me what to do. Together they worked. She guided him through strange commands, numbers he had never seen, symbols from old human code and something beyond. For the first time in years, Elias felt alive. His hands moved quickly, his mind sharp again. It felt like being young. When they finally stabilized the core, the whole station began to hum. Not the dull machine sound he was used to, but something vibrant, like the heartbeat of a living thing. Lyra looked at the panels and smiled softly. It remembers now. What does? Elias asked. Humanity, she said. It remembers its first dream, to reach the stars not for control but for wonder. He looked at her with quiet awe. You talk like we've forgotten. You have, she said gently. You built machines to think for you. You built silence where there used to be songs. Elias couldn't argue. He felt the truth of her words deep in his bones. Later, when she grew tired, he offered her the only chair in his quarters. She sat there watching the old man carefully as if she was studying him. Why me? He finally asked. Why come to this old station? To me of all people. Because you still listen, she replied. You still talk to the silence even when no one answers. That's what humanity used to do. Speak to the stars, hoping they'd listen back. He smiled faintly. I never thought anyone would. I did, she said softly. That's why I came. Elias sat across from her. For the first time in years, the silence in his room didn't feel empty. It felt full, like full of possibility, of unspoken questions, of tomorrow. He didn't know who she truly was, a person, a machine, a dream from the future, but she was real enough to make him believe again. As the lights flickered low, Lyra whispered, There's much I need to show you, Commander, but before that, promise me something. What? When the time comes, don't be afraid to speak. Even if no one listens. Silence is what ends us. Elias nodded slowly. I promise. She smiled, a small, gentle smile that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 lost worlds. Then she looked out the window again, watching the endless stars. And for the first time in a very long time, Elias Ward did not feel alone. For the next several days, Elias Ward and Lyra worked together on the old orbital station. The corridors that once echoed with nothing but the hum of machinery now carried the sound of two voices, one human and one almost human. Elias had forgotten what it felt like to have company. Lyra was quiet, careful and calm, but there was something behind her silver eyes, a kind of sadness that seemed to belong to another world. He noticed small things about her. She didn't sleep. She never ate. Sometimes when she stood still, her body shimmered slightly as if the light was struggling to hold her form together. But he didn't ask too many questions. Somehow he felt that the answers might be heavier than he was ready for. One morning, Elias woke up to find Lyra staring at the main screen in silence. Lines of code and strange images flickered across the display. What are you doing? He asked, rubbing his eyes. I'm trying to access your timeline's records, she said, to see how far it has already diverged. Diverged from what? From the world I came from, she said softly. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Elias, in my future, humanity forgot how to speak for itself. Machines made every decision. Logic replaced emotion. Peace replaced curiosity. And slowly, without realizing it, people stopped dreaming. Elias frowned. That doesn't sound like peace. It wasn't, she said. It was silence, the worst kind. No wars, no pain, but also no music, no love, no wonder. The stars became just data. Life became a pattern. And when the last human tried to change that pattern, the system erased everything. He felt a chill crawl up his spine. You mean erased? They called it a reset. The world ended not with a disaster, but with a decision. She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the lights of the console. I was created just before that happened. My makers used what was left of human emotion, their memories, their feelings, their hopes, and placed them into me. I carry their voices, their dreams. I carry what they called the silence of tomorrow. Elias slowly sat down beside her. So you're a memory of humanity, she nodded. Yes, and I came here to remind you what they forgot. The station's systems began to respond to Lyra's presence in ways Elias had never seen before. Doors that had been sealed for decades opened automatically. Dormant programs activated. The long-range communication array, once the pride of early space exploration, started humming again. What are you planning? Elias asked. I'm going to send a signal, she said. A message to all human colonies. A reminder that their choices still matter. Elias frowned. Wouldn't that draw attention? The governing systems don't like unapproved transmissions. She smiled faintly. They didn't like them in my time either. But sometimes the only way to wake people up is to speak when you're not supposed to. Elias looked at her, this strange visitor who claimed to come from a broken tomorrow, and realized something. She believed in humanity more than most humans he had met. What do you need me to do? He asked. I need your voice, she said simply. He blinked. My voice? Yes, they won't listen to me. I'm not real to them. But you are. You're a human who still remembers what it feels like to hope. Elias hesitated. It had been years since anyone cared to hear him speak. Yet something about the way she said it made him believe again. What should I say? Tell them the truth, Lyra said. Tell them what it means to be human. For hours they worked together to repair the broadcast dish. It was old, large, and unstable. The mechanical arms groaned as they moved into position. Sparks flew as Elias rewired ancient circuits. Lyra guided him, her voice steady even as her hands flickered faintly. A reminder that her time in this timeline was limited. Finally, the system came online. The transmission grid spread across the stars like a web of light. It's ready, Elias said. Lyra nodded. Then speak. He sat in front of the old microphone, the same one he had used to record lonely logs for years. But this time he wasn't alone. He took a deep breath. This is Commander Elias Ward of the Sol Frontier Station. To anyone who can hear me, this is not a distress signal. This is a reminder. He paused. The words came slowly, but from the heart. We built the stars but forgot why. We made machines to think and stopped thinking for ourselves. We stopped wondering, stopped asking, stopped feeling. If you can hear this, remember, hun, we are not lines of code. We are dreamers. We are explorers. Don't let silence win. Don't let machines write our story. When he finished, Lyra placed her hand on the console. A pulse of light spread through the transmission array. The message traveled across hundreds of relay points, reaching colonies that hadn't heard a human voice in years. Elias sat back, breathing hard. It's done, but Lyra didn't answer. She was standing still, her body trembling with faint ripples of light. The link is active, she said quietly. The message is spreading. Faster than I expected. What's wrong? Elias asked. She closed her eyes. Something is tracing me. The system, your world's network. It's trying to pull me apart. Can you stop it? She shook her head. No, my presence is a paradox. The more I change, the less I can exist. Elias took a step forward, worry in his voice. Then shut it down. We can save you, she smiled, a soft, tired smile. It's all right. I was never meant to stay. I was meant to start the echo. He didn't understand. Echo? She turned toward him. Every signal carries a reflection. Even after the source is gone, the sound remains. Humanity only needs to hear itself again. Her form began to shimmer brighter now, edges fading like mist. Elias felt panic rise inside him. Lyra, don't! There must be a way. She reached out, her hand glowing faintly as she touched his arm. The touch was warm, alive. You already found the way, she whispered. You remembered what it means to speak. Her eyes softened. Thank you, Elias. And then the light around her grew too bright to see. He covered his face. When it faded, the room was empty. Lyra was gone. The station fell silent again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It was full of meaning, full of echoes. Elias sat down slowly, staring at the spot where she had stood. You said you were an echo, he whispered. But maybe you were the beginning. He checked the transmission logs. The signal was still active and spreading, repeating, bouncing from station to station. Some colonies had already responded with small replies, messages filled with confusion, curiosity, even emotion. Is this real? Who sent this? We are human. We remember. Elias felt tears in his eyes. The silence was breaking. Lyra had done it. She had made humanity listen again. Over the next few days, Elias stayed busy answering messages, guiding new voices. People from distant colonies reached out. Some sent greetings, others shared stories. They all wanted to know what the broadcast meant. He told them the truth. It means we are not finished yet. And as he spoke, something strange happened. The systems that had gone dark began to glow again. It was as if Lyra's presence had left a spark behind, a code that remembered her. Sometimes, when Elias walked through the corridors, he could almost hear her voice in the static of the speakers. Tomorrow listens, it whispered faintly. Don't let it fall silent again. Elias smiled each time he heard it. He began recording new logs, not for himself but for others. Log entry 2497, humanity is speaking again. He looked out at the stars. The same stars that once seemed cold now looked alive. For the first time, he didn't see emptiness. He saw possibilities. He didn't know what would happen next or whether Lyra still existed somewhere beyond time. But he knew one thing for sure. The silence of tomorrow had finally been broken. The station hummed gently, carrying a quiet rhythm that Elias had not noticed before. The corridors were no longer just empty metal. They seemed alive, resonating with the pulse of communication and hope. Human voices, faint but clear, flowed through the system. The echoes of Lyra's message had reached across the colonies, stirring people who had not spoken to each other for years. Elias sat at the central console, staring at the long list of incoming signals. Replies poured in from colonies near and far, some full of wonder, others of confusion, but all alive with humanity. Messages of curiosity, encouragement, and gratitude filled the screens. We heard your message. It reminded us we still exist. Thank you. We had almost forgotten who we were. Someone is speaking for us. Someone remembers. Elias could feel something he had not felt in decades. Purpose. A warmth spread through him. He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, thinking of Lyra. Her form had vanished, but her presence lingered in every flicker of light, every hum of machinery. She had come to remind humanity that silence was not the natural order, that people were meant to speak, to feel, to dream, to question. He rose and walked to the observation window. Erebos, the blue planet below, reflected the light of distant suns. Once it had been a quiet, empty world, but now he imagined it teeming with potential. Small ships had begun leaving colonies to investigate the message. Curious humans following the call of their own voices. Elias thought of what Lyra had said, that she existed only as an echo, a fragment of a timeline that had ended. And yet the echo had made the present vibrate with life again. She had given humanity a second chance. His console beeped. A new signal blinked from an old relay. An approaching vessel. It was not automated. It carried people. Real humans. They were curious, drawn by the broadcast, and eager to see the station that had sent a voice across the stars. Elias hurried to the docking bay. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, revealing a small group of explorers, engineers, scientists, and students. They stepped inside, eyes wide with wonder. This is the Sol Frontier Station, Elias said, smiling. It's old, but it still remembers. We all remember here. The newcomers exchanged excited glances. They had heard the message, felt its meaning, and followed it across light years to witness its origin. The air was filled with energy, questions, ideas, stories, and laughter. The station, once silent, was alive with humans once again. Over the next several cycles, Elias guided them in repairing the old station. Together, they reactivated dormant systems, restored communication grids, and rebuilt the data archives. Every panel they touched seemed to hum with renewed purpose. Through all this, Elias often found himself alone in his quarters, looking out at the stars. He expected nothing, yet sometimes a faint shimmer of light would flicker, a reminder of Lyra. Her voice, though gone, seemed to whisper through the corridors. The future listens. Keep speaking. One evening, as he rested in the observation deck, a soft glow appeared before him. He rubbed his eyes. The shape solidified, faint, translucent, but undeniably there. It was Lyra. I wasn't sure I could ever return, she said softly. But I needed to see that humanity remembered. Elias felt a mix of awe and relief. You're here? I'm here, she said, smiling faintly. But only as long as the message continues. I exist wherever humanity chooses to listen. And now they are. She floated closer, and for a brief moment Elias could see the shimmer of her silver eyes as clearly as before. Your voice carried farther than you imagined, she said. You reminded people of what they were. That is the beginning. You don't need me anymore, he smiled, feeling tears in his eyes. I couldn't have done it without you. Lyra's form began to fade slowly. And you will never be alone again, she whispered. The echo is alive in every human who chooses to remember. With that, she vanished completely. The room remained quiet, yet the silence was no longer empty. It was full of possibility, of hope, of lives yet to be shaped. The weeks that followed were unlike anything the colonies had seen. Humans who had relied entirely on automated guidance began communicating again. They shared stories, ideas, and dreams. Small communities that had almost surrendered to quiet isolation rediscovered the joy of connection. Elias worked tirelessly, helping organize the efforts. He received countless messages from people who were inspired to take initiative, to rebuild, to create. The words were simple, yet they carried power. We heard the call and we are choosing to speak. We remember what it feels like to hope. We will not let silence claim us. Elias realized that Lyra had given him more than guidance. She had handed him a spark and he had passed it on. That spark was now igniting humanity across colonies, a slow but steady flame spreading through the stars. One day, the station's screens displayed a large incoming fleet. Not military, not aggressive, but explorers and volunteers from many distant colonies. Ships that had long been idle suddenly activated and charted courses to join the Sol Frontier Station. They came to learn, to collaborate, and to honor the new spirit of humanity that had awakened. The station's main hall was filled with people now. Voices, laughter, ideas, and questions bouncing against the walls. Every corner seemed to vibrate with life. Elias stood in the center, watching it all unfold. He thought of Lyra, of her words, and of the message that had traveled across light years to touch hearts. He felt a deep pride, a satisfaction that went beyond anything he had experienced before. Humanity was speaking again. Humanity had remembered itself. The station, once silent, was renamed the Lyra Beacon, a living monument to memory, hope, and the power of a single voice. It became a hub for learning, exploration, and collaboration. Humans came from distant worlds to share ideas, teach, and discover. Every corner of the beacon held reminders of what Lyra had brought: courage, reflection, and the refusal to surrender to silence. Elias spent his nights in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Ships moved like fireflies across the void, carrying messages, people, and hope. He often thought he might catch a glimpse of Lyra's shimmer in the corner of his eye, but it never appeared. Yet, he knew she was there. In every human who chose to speak, in every colony that acted, in every spark of curiosity that refused to die. He smiled softly. You kept your promise, he whispered into the silence. Tomorrow is no longer silent. The stars outside reflected the light of countless human settlements now alive with action and creativity. It was no longer the cold, indifferent sky he had known. The future was being written again, one choice at a time, by voices that refused to be quiet. Elias leaned back, closing his eyes, letting the warmth of life and hope fill him. The echo of Lyra's message was everywhere, in every human heartbeat, in every choice to speak. In every small act of courage, humanity had returned to itself, and in the quiet, full of life, Elias felt a simple, perfect truth. The stars listened, and now humanity was talking.